This is Yerushalmi Peah Daf Chav Vav. We're right at the top of Daf Chav Vav. This is finished Chav Ham Beis the bottom yesterday, and we're all in the Bavli in the Vilna. It is 8 lines from the up from where lines become wide on Daf Yud Dalit Amud Aleph. Manakim, what are you talking about? Even Murvachim. Now Murvachim is not going on the, as I would have expected. Perhaps you would have expected on the Malbenos. It's going on the trees. So if the trees are far apart, so then they're not a hefsek. They don't interrupt, and therefore you give a pair from one can give pair from one malbein and all the other malbeinos. People are tsufin if the trees are very close together. So then the trees are a barrier, and you should pay from each and every malbein separately. So Kiana Kaim, we'll say about between Mata Eser Beisa, when they're planted 10 in a Beisa, which is the standard measure of the trees to be called an orchard or a vineyard or anything else which has to do with the trees in terms of lots of different halachos and shas. So if they're planted and in that kind of intervals, those kinds of intervals, so then that's machlekas. Beis Shammai of the Hun Kirtzufin, Beis Shammai considers them as if they are close together and therefore they interrupt between the Malbenos, and you have to give a pair for each and every one individually. Whereas Beis Hillel Beis Hillel considers them to be meruvachim, that is expansive, and therefore you can give from each from all the malbenos together, from one on all of them. Precise measure. The base is 2,500 square amos, and that means each tree has 250 square amos, and I think it comes out to about 16 amos between trees. If I recall correctly, we had a few days ago, when it's planted at those intervals. Okay, my time of the Beis Shammai. What is the logic of Beis Shammai? It's interesting. Normally, Beis Shammai means a pasuk, but here it means in the Bavli means what's the svara. She'ein derech mi'ad mi'os machnisim zroim bein ha'elonos. People don't put seeds, their seeds among the trees. In other words, with the trees, they interrupt because trees and seeds don't mix. The shade of the trees is bad for the seeds, presumably. So therefore, they're considered, when in doubt, consider them separate. Ask you Beis Shammai Rabbi Yossi. The Shammai seems to be going to Rabbi Yossi, who's later on in Mishnah Dalet. This is like he says that you don't normally put onions among vegetables. So here it's because of the shade, which of the trees, which makes it not suitable for the seeds to be planted underneath. And there it's because the onions harm the vegetables. So the Gemara says it's Mistapa Beis Shammai Yodel Rabbi Yossi lo Yodel Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai will concede the point of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi not concede the point of Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai will do Rabbi Yossi. Shein derech mi'ol mi'os machlitzim b'tzom me'er. It's harmful, so therefore you don't put them in proximity. Rabbi, it says in the Vilna it says Rabbi, but missing the Yossi, but. Yeah, it should be Rabbi Yossi. I think it's missing Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, lo you go to Beis Shammai. Can't derech mi'adam lios machlisim be'ezroim be'elanos. Evidently, it's not as harmful to put the zroim among the trees, and therefore people do that, and therefore Rabbi Yossi not to concede to Beis Shammai on this point. Says more further. Hayasham Goder, the Ridbaz says, well, Hayasham Goder kamo kamin du Elon. If there's a a fence which is like a tree. Now, the Rebaz changed the gears here. He says, "Hayasham ilan kamin do goder, ken gears sashno sel yozal." That's gears of the gra. Farish kamo the goder have a hefsek, just like a fence is a hefsek. Ken have a ilan a hefsek malbenos. A tree is also going to hefsek among the patches of grain. Perish imayoy ilan rachav arba. If the tree is 4 amos wide, um, then that's according to read Baz. The Kavanaki has a different interpretation. The Kavanaki says uh, uh, the if there's a tree, the exact opposite. If there's a fence, which is the size of a tree, so then it's not going to be mafsik unless it meets the parameters of similar to a tree, and it has to have to, but I guess even more chomer. You have to have more fence. In other words, the width of a tree is not a hefsek. But I think look, the Rebaz is going with the gra, and I think that seems to be more glatt that way. So we'll go with the gra. Ad kedun muravim mikan. So we saw the picture yesterday. Muravim mikan, right? Talking about where at the edges of the this field, there the malbenos of Tua overlap with each other, and here are the muravim on both sides, right, top and bottom. So akdu muravim kan harei muravim tzad echad. What if they're only murav on one side, and the obishlosha klamin shalop asiach of fil koshu. Now the Ridbaz takes out the word o. Let's see the Ridbaz. He says, "I'm going to come and compare shos the other Riboilan. Honey, I see some Russian shos muravim. No sim peachas. That muravim can be kind, but it's only when they are they get mixed together on both sides. Ava arei muravim utzad echad. Im no sim peach echad or mikolach ve'echad. So we get peah from one or on each one. V'nishar b'teiku. And it's not resolved. V'chem boy od. And then we have another question. Kama yu muravim. How much? What's considered to be muravim? Oh, kishlosha klamish pasiach if it overlaps 3 furrows with breadth, or koshli sagi, or if it's enough that it overlaps mashu. No, it's a colon. That would be then you give one payout on all of it, even if it overlaps a mashu. So there are two separate questions. In Tzarlios Mura Mishleit Stadim, if it has to be mixed on both sides, and we said or one side is enough. Vafim Mura Mishleit Stadim, even if it overlaps on both sides. Abledina Shira Eruv, we don't know how much the overlap has to be. In Tzarlios Sayyid Kishlosh Klemish Pasiach, if it's enough, you need to have 3 furrows with Sagi Bakoshu, the Nishar Bateku, and that too remains unresolved. Hamanamer. The next part of Mishnah had been talked about a menamer, somebody who harvests in sections. Menamer sadei uchule kadein nimra. So this is like a leopard, I think. Right? A leopard, like a leopard it's spotted, right? Do a different spot harvest from different spots. Makoma has volume olin tchila. The place where it's fertilized comes up first, and evidently they get ripe, and they get dry, and it's not just that you harvest them separately, but when the field is intact, it looks like a leopard, because some places are fully developed and dry, some places are still soft and moist. So it's not a menamer just that when you act menamer where you harvest it at separate times. When it's still in the ground, it looks like it's separate places, like a leopard. So the nimada karle, that's what we call it, a leopard. Akadun yove shmikan mikan v'lach b'emtza. Okay, so that it says more is I understand when it was dry on two sides and it was moist in the middle. So in that case, the Rabbi Akiva in our Mishnah, who says per miko achas v'achas, that's when he says that you have to give each one separately, each dry part separately. That's the Kavanaki in the name of the Gra. There are other interpretations here. then that's also the Ridbaz here. Perishal goes out b'shnos yelodim yibayle aliv Rabbi Akiva l'sfilei the mafsik. They also called Yovesh Per Mivnei Atzma. Shivsicho son lach hech sfilim hivsik Yovesh ben halachim. Okay, that's I understand where there's two dry spots and moist in the middle. That's what I have to say. What about if there are two moist spots and dry in the middle? So you take pale kol lach v'lach. You can pay on each and every one separately. Oh, pay achas, or one pay on all of them. Okay, so that's one of the question. What's the story then? So Rabbi Ba, Rabbi Chia, B'Shem Yochad said, Asya, Rabbi Meir, B'Shir Rabbi Akiva, Rabbo. So it says the Rebaz, Asya Meir, the Svili Kotzer L'Shachas, Mafsik, when you cut for animal fodder, it interrupts. Meir Rabbo, like Meir's Rebbe. K'mar Akiva Amar, K'mar Akiva Amar Lach B'Yovesh Shnei Minimim. Sister Akiva says that moist and dry are two separate minim, because they look different. So the Meir says that Lach and Yovesh are also two minim. And so it says to read Baz, in other words, the kotel shachas havik yovesh be'emtza. It's like the dry part in the middle. Amad yovesh mafsik, the dry part in the middle also interrupts between the two lachin. Now, as the Kamenaki brings down the name of the Gra, the question, why should it be any different? Because a Yavesh and Yavesh, Lach B'emtza, at the time you harvest the Yavesh, earlier, the Lach is still B'emtza, so it interrupts. But when the Lach and the Yavesh in the middle, you already harvested the Yavesh. In the middle, by the time you come to harvest the Lach on the two sides, later on, when they become mature. So the question is, with the fact that there was a Yavesh in the beginning, does that interrupt? Or the fact that now there's no Yavish in the middle means we give one pay on all of it. And there was also a mayor who says that Koitzel L'Shachas, even though you already harvested what's in the middle, the animal fodder, right, you still have to give pay from each of the sides of the Shachas, which is, even though there's no Shachas in the middle anymore, individually. So do the same thing here. Ami Chavayakum Rabbi Yossi. The Chavraya, the people, the people in the base matter said in front of Yossi, Lamali Rabbi Akiva. Why is this specifically halacha according to Rabbi Akiva? We learned hamachlik b'tzalim lashuk, somebody who separates a certain onions he takes early to the marketplace. Leaves those of the moist ones. He leaves the dry ones for later in order to store the stock by him in silo. So Rabbi Yossi said, "Shamina shok v'garnish ne'minimim." We have to go two payers because that which goes to the shuk and that which goes to the garden are considered two types, right? Lach v'yavish ne'minimim, right? So the Lach v'yavish are also two. It would seem to be two minim in the same way. I read that wrong. Sorry, maybe because I'm already on Chav Zayin Aleph. I shouldn't have gone that far. So but the way to read that is actually as an answer. Rabbi Yossi is an answer to Chabraya's question. He said, no, it's not the same thing. Shuk v'goren shnei minim. Those are considered to be two different species. Lach v'yavesh shnei minim. Of you would think lach v'yavesh are two minim. In other words, evidently the onions which one takes to the marketplace early and the onions which one leaves in one's field are considered to be two, since they're for two separate purposes, are considered to be two minim. But lach v'yavesh is just that one is later than the other, and not for two separate purposes. So therefore, they would not be considered two separate minim. So the fact that Rabbanan would agree with the halacha by onions doesn't mean they'd agree with the halacha by lach v'yavesh. And we've gotten way into Daf Chav Zayin. Of course, we'll stop here.